Time Oil, Hayden Island, and a number of surrounding port-owned industrial properties. Uh, while we still have a lot of legwork to do, what we hope to achieve on the more intermediate steps forward is getting landowner buy-in, and which is UP buy-in, enough to pique their interest to get inside their brain. And what I mean by that is to use this initial report and say, okay, guys, we've identified several viable sites that address these three primary constraints that you've identified. But before we demonstrate full site feasibility and do a full workup of the legals, commercials, environmentals, we would like to get some detailed information from Union Pacific to our current rail engineers so that what we pay our engineers to build out on these sites in phase two actually suit UP's plans, needs, and desires. Because whatever, Mo or any developer or HDR or Vizian or any engineering, railroad expert out there could put on a piece of paper, if it doesn't have that non-public information, and what's really important to Union Pacific, in my thinking, it's kind of going to be a stagnant step that's not really moving the ball forward. So we've shared with Union Pacific and have asked them to share this report internally with key UP groups. And, we're just awaiting feedback in a response. So we should hear back something this month. So our fingers are crossed for that. This here is just an evaluation matrix, as it's called. You see on the left-hand side here, you got the Albina and the Brooklyn Yard, and some of this decision criteria that's used. These are some of the various sites in town that address the three concerns, for Union Pacific to getting something like this done. So that's kind of where we're at with this. Like I said, we're kind of in a waiting game right now. It's a very delicate dance, and trying to capture UP's imagination. But, we plan to pursue some, public infrastructure dollars, Metro, the PSEF bond, and try to really put together and drop a really, nice conceptual plan that shows that we can move the railroad. Sorry, my phone is. So anyways, that's a little bit about what we're doing. And I know that just may all be crazy to some folks because who've never heard about this, but yeah, I want to make sure that you guys have, I can answer questions. So please let me know, with that said, I would like to open up the floor for folks who, if anybody has questions. Yeah, sorry, I'm not sure how to.
Quincy has his hand up. Go ahead, Quincy.
Yeah, thanks. I always forget how to raise my hand actually on this Zoom call. But yeah, so my question kind of comes from location and ideas and where they would want to move the rail yard. I know that currently there's definitely an environmental justice issue about where the rail yard has traditionally been. What are some of the options and locations for that space, and are there going to be methods to make sure that it doesn't create the same environmental justice issue that is created in the Albina neighborhood, for example?
Absolutely, that's a great question, and I may not know exactly or precisely where this yard, if I were to consolidate the Albina and Brooklyn rail yards, where they would go today, because I'm not the rail expert, but I can, tell you that we would definitely not make our problem someone else's problem. If you just look at what's around Barnes Yard, which is, by the way, it's an existing Union Pacific site. If you just look what's around there, at least from an urban standpoint, you just have a lot of industrial users there. But the big $64 million question is, where would you move them to? And so I think it could be an amalgam of sites. It could be Barnes Yard, Time Oil, Rivergate, and you would kind of piecemeal it together, if you will. That's just my silly guess. And I think, you know, if we go forward and go into phase two, I think we'll have a better answer for that. So, um, yeah.
Sam.
Yeah, so I was on this board when we helped you raise money for your preliminary engineering study. And I was kind of hoping you could tell us a little bit more about what you got for our money and whether
Yeah.
there's any left.
Yeah. So the the what Southeast Uplift made a huge contribution for 7,500. This report was just under $25,000, and this report, which I hopefully you've seen, but it basically answers the binary question of, do we have the land? I mean, that is the most fundamental question. And what are some of the potential sites that this could really take shape? I think everyone on this call, and even at the time when we were at that board meeting, Sam, understood that this was a very speculative thing, and it still is.
That
It's
really wasn't
just
meant to be critical. I just felt like as a since this board has so little institutional memory right now, I just felt like somebody had to take responsibility for asking that question.
sure. I appreciate that. Please ask away. I mean, I can't answer everyone's questions just because I'm not the rail expert, but I will do my best to answer everyone's questions. And Sam, if you didn't get a copy of this, I'm happy to share that with you.
Jesse.
Thank you. Following up on Sam's question, as one of those new board members, I do have a little bit of awareness about this effort, just kind of from osmosis. But I was wondering if there could be a restatement, and I think this is a question in the chat, of the sort of underlying purpose or rationale for wanting to move those yards out of neighborhoods and consolidate them into a new location.
Yeah, absolutely. It creates a huge bottleneck. If you look at right now, the railroad, for instance, is running this thing called the PSR. It's precision scheduled railroading, which really just means they're going to run longer trains. If you look at this, or I can't show it to you now, but they have, it's really just going to get worse in terms of the through traffic that Oregon is expecting for the rail demand. And, you know, the Albina yard, or the Brooklyn yard, for instance, is in the dead middle of a residential neighborhood. The Albina yard, since 1887, hasn't had any money really invested into it. And I just think that we can build the railroad a better mousetrap. It's happening in a lot of other areas right now. Happened recently in Spokane. It's happened in New York. It happened in Lafayette, Indiana. I mean, there's a national trend over the last 30 years of rail relocations being moved out to outlying areas. I mean, populations have really just grown since, you know, Abe Lincoln signed this, the first Pacific Railroad Act. So there's a lot of moving parts to these, but I reached out to the railroad a couple years back and just said, hey, how about we relocate you guys? And they just said, heck no. And then after some persistence, in raising some money, and of course with the incredible help of Southeast Uplift, we've been able to show them that we're serious, and we've got one hell of an engineer on this who's put his heart into this. So I really think we've got a good case for this. But I'm happy to share some other projects, some precedents that have been done with Union Pacific in the last couple of years that kind of show the framework to how these get done. They're very doable. They sound insurmountable, but they are doable. So.
Well, I've got Machu, and then I see you, Anna, so you'll be after Machu.
Yeah, thanks for the update, Mo. You mentioned that Spokane has done a rail relocation. About how long did that take? As just like a point of reference for how long this project might take hypothetically.
Yeah. So the engineer who HDR is the firm that did I forget, I don't know if it was the flyover in Spokane, but I know they did some work up there. The lead engineer here at Kurt Reichelt told me he was the PM for that project. So all I can tell you is I think that if this were to happen, and we got the local jurisdictions to help us out with this, I think this would be a 10 to 20 year project. But again, it's hard to tell without having a full plan put in front of the railroad, because a relocation strategy has to first be determined before they're ever really in on this.
All right, thank you, Anna.
Yeah, so I have been working on a railroad or rail yard for redevelopment in Germany, and so I'm just wondering, and it's highly problematic to deal with these leftovers and the environmental impact that these railroads leave there. Do you have any plans included of how to redevelop and how to clean up, and who is paying for this?
So I actually have, and this is a great segue into, we actually just have our newest member, who's also a Southeast Uplift member, Kat, with Skio, and I don't know where she is, if she's still in this, but she's the environmental expert, and she's got just a encyclopedia of knowledge about this. But I think these costs are borne into the project, and I think that's outside of my expertise, to be honest. I know that's not the answer that you wanted to hear, but
no, but it's good to know that you have it at least in your awareness, because
Yeah.
that's usually one thing that kills a lot of those projects, because it just becomes so complicated and difficult to deal with that on legal issues and financial issues.
Absolutely.
I think Kat wants to say something to it.
Anna, thank you so much for bringing that up, because often the environmental contamination is what kills these like tremendously exciting projects. And I'd love to talk to you more about your experience. But luckily, there are successful projects much like this around the country, and the Albina Yards is part of the Portland Harbor Superfund site, and there are liability protections in place for developers, both from the federal and from the state level, who can, they'll provide liability protections. And then it's a matter of finding responsible parties, which I think is pretty much well underway, to finalize the cleanup. And then it's a really good negotiation just to make sure that in the end, human health and the environment is protected. But thanks for bringing that up.
Thanks, Kat.
Thanks. Are there any other questions this time? Look at you. Got in under your 20 minutes.
Wow, that's incredible. Yeah, sorry again if that sounded just the verbiage, and I'm happy to share the PowerPoint with folks and when to have you.
Well, I just want to thank you on behalf of Southeast Uplift staff for sharing the presentation. And I did work for a long time in Spokane. There are some success stories there. There is an old railroad line that was abandoned years ago. We worked really hard to redevelop that 87 acres, including lots of brownfield cleanup. And now it's a very successful mixed-use development. So it can happen, and it just takes time and it takes a lot of work. But given the outstanding location of these rail yards, I think the market would respond. So, nice work. I've done work with railroads as well, and it's a really long haul. But
Yeah.
You're asking the right questions. I really appreciate Quincy's questions, because those are crucial if you're going to study this. So, thanks for the opportunity, Mo. And then as we get down the road and there's more opportunities for an update, let us know. We'll get a copy of the study to all the board. I think we sent it, but if not, we will send it. And I think there was an ask if you could put a link in the chat. If you have it, that'd be great.
Absolutely.
Okay. Thanks, Mo. We really appreciate your time tonight.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
All right, so if I am remembering correctly, the next item is the vote to for the new members to join the board. Stephanie, would you mind kind of talking about that, the process? And you said you might be able to. Is she still here?
I'm still here. Let me just get myself back on camera so you can see I'm really here. The Board Development Committee, which consisted of me and Anna and Jesse and Alan and Tina, met, I don't know, 3 or 4 times. It was a pretty intensive month, and we received the applications. Was it a total of 9 people that were interested in serving on the board? And it was a very lively discussion, and we worked to improve both the application materials and also the matrix by which we evaluated them. So I think we had in mind all along that we were laying down some new frameworks and processes for the Board Development Committee. I think you'll hear more from this committee in the future. So this is just a start. We had plenty of other ideas of things we wanted to do, but we needed to stay on the board's time schedule for this year, so we could bring new board members in. So what we concluded was to recommend a slate to the board today that we all had a consensus around, and also to let you see a summary of meeting the different candidates. In the past, that hasn't happened, but we felt it was important for the board to understand these were going to be new board members to the whole board, and over time, we want to use the business, community, and at-large positions to just continue to strengthen this board so that it's more effective and more representative, and we ask more of all the board members, because as you're starting to see, committees are happening and they are doing stuff, and it really is mattering and helping business of Southeast Uplift move along. So I think this was a really good experience, and I think that maybe covers it enough. Is that good, Tina? And I'll turn it back to you, or do you want me to tell you who the recommendations were too?
Yeah, I mean, if you want to talk about the process, what we're going to do now, too, for the vote.
Well, since we put together a slate, as I said, of recommended candidates, we are asking for the board to approve that slate, and it includes 1 person for the available business position, Nancy Chapin. Let's see, I don't have it right in front of me, so help me, Tina. And 3 at-large positions, one of which is Estefania, who wanted to switch over to at-large. And the second is Catherine Diaz, without introducing them all again, because you got their information. And the third is David Gruber. So those are our recommendations, and we're asking the board to vote it in as a slate. But we know you might have some questions or different process, but I guess that comes to the board as a seconded motion. Is that the way the committee works? Yeah.
So are you making a motion?
Ruben?
No.
I have a question.
Go ahead, Ruben.
Am I on?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you, committee, for doing this work. I've been on this committee, I think, 3 or 4 times, and appreciate you leading those candidates. I did notice that the community organization slot it's open, seems still unfilled, and I wanted to ask about that. It seemed like there was a community organization that applied, and maybe somebody could speak a little bit to why they weren't recommending for that.
You want me to keep talking, Tina?
I have to talk all the time, so I'd love for you to.
Okay. We had a split vote on the candidate for the community organization, and it also generated a lot of discussion about what it means to represent a community organization, just generally, and what for the Southeast Uplift board, what kinds of community organizations would be useful to have on the board. So I think it quickly opened for us a really big discussion that it's going to take a few years to really think through, and the general consensus of the application, and it was, for those of you who don't know, it was from Inner Southeast Action, and there's a number of people there tonight, was that the organization was so new that we just wanted to see, you know, if it had legs, how long it was going to last, what it was up to, and in another year we'd have a lot more information about that, and that was kind of a principle we would have said about any brand new organization. So we definitely would like to fill that community organization slot, but have a better sense of what that group is, what it's come to represent, what it's doing, who's a member, just have a little more time with it. So basically our message back to Inner Southeast Action is, please come back in a year and show us what else you've done.
And
Does that help, Ruben?
Yeah, the follow-up question. We've had at times unfilled slots, or even at this juncture in July. But given that this slot isn't spoken for, I'm curious what the committee or the board sees as the risk of having them join us now as a way to, increase the probability or the diversity of our board right now, and that, we have another election in a year. We could, as opposed to throw them off if or not renew their candidacy. Anyway, I was a little surprised because I've heard it work, and we even a few minutes ago heard from, I think, the representative who's running for this seat, who, unbeknownst to me, knew something about our topic tonight. So anyway, I would, if there is an opportunity, be interested in moving to adopt the slate, but add Inner Southeast Action as well.
So we did not have enough votes to move that person forward or that organization forward to our recommended slate. We wanted
no,
to.
I understood that. I understood that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was going to move the board to consider the slate you proposed, but to add that particular candidate back in, I guess, for the board to decide.
So it's back to you, Tina, if that's an amended motion,
Jesse,
or if you want to vote on the slate and then take that up as a second.
Jessie wanted to speak real quick. She had her hand up here.
So I am on that committee, and I was unfortunately not able to attend the last meeting that we had, where some of these, I feel, sort of formative decisions were made. Given the reasoning that we're talking about, I think, and coming from the organization that I represent, which doesn't hold bylaws, and which is also a very new organization and perhaps hasn't quite got the demonstrated track record even that Inner Southeast Action already has. I just wanted to put out that I would second a motion as Ruben proposed, because I felt strongly that this represented a kind of changing horses in midstream, or modifying a proposal process that had been used in previous years, kind of without sufficient, I felt, or widespread enough discussion on it.
Anna?
Yeah, I want to say something about the process, because in the beginning, when we first met, we had a lot of discussion of how we make the determination for the matrix, how we decide on people joining the board and becoming directors. And we said we are looking for a skill set that we don't have at the moment, and that really contributes to enhancing what we are doing. And so since we had a very long discussion on that organization, and I really like the idea of that organization, but I also have some questions about this kind of programming. And at the moment, I don't see where it's really going with that programming. And I think that was the question we had. And Tina brought up at one point in our discussion, we are also here at Southeast Uplift board to help organizations or individuals to develop skills, to develop programming. And I'm all for to say, like, we should help in a Southeast Uplift and collaborate to develop those skills, but to actually have this thing where we say, like, we really look for something that has substance to really bring on the board. And I felt like we didn't feel that about the organization right now.
Can I, since everyone else spoke on this committee, can I have a moment?
Sure, go ahead. I haven't spoke, but go ahead.
Oh, sorry.
That's what's
Yeah.
right.
Well, first of all, Nancy Chapin, she's 82nd Avenue of Roses Business Association. That wasn't pointed out. But we in the group, 3 of us felt Inter Southeast Action was so new, but also such a mysterious organization. There's not much you can learn about them on their website. And that's why, I mean, to be frank, Brian and I went to their meeting to find out about them.
Alan, let's not go down that path
Okay,
right now.
I'm just saying that we all, 3 of us agreed we don't know much about this organization. And I have no idea how membership is defined, if members have any vote, if directors are voted. To me, it's such a black hole on what they are. And I thought we as a group talked about making a motion for the board to adopt our recommendation. And in the discussion, people talk about if the vote doesn't pass, then someone can make a second motion. But, we were charged as a committee, and, we spent 3 months working on this, or 4 meetings. And I'd like to see our work, kind of.
Okay, so let's discuss that part then. So what was discussed was that for this vote, if we want to do a slate with the recommended candidates, so the 3 that were mentioned, and then if
4.
Oh, 4. I'm sorry. Estefania is always with us, so I always forget her. She's always already part of us. So yeah, so the 4 candidates. So if then enough didn't pass, then we would. So for example, if I wanted to vote for Inter Southeast Action, then I would vote no for the first slate, and then we would motion to add them to the second slate, and then we would have a second vote. That was how it was discussed. So any questions on that? Would that work for people?
Yeah, I didn't understand, Amy. I didn't understand what you just said about the first and second slate, but also I just wanted to ask, it sounds like this is a new sort of rule deciding this business is young. I mean, I want to make sure it's equitable. This organization should be serving our Black community, and Southeast Uplift's priorities are about creating inclusive and equitable communities. So it seems aligned with our mission, and maybe not our actions as of late, but we should be moving more in this direction. And so if there's an open spot and there is not some flagrant thing that this organization has done, I don't see how this is getting excluded. It doesn't seem to be an equitable decision to me. Unless we are looking at every organization through the same lens. And so when I was screened at PCC, did you do the same questions, and did you use CRT? Like, how did these decisions get made? And like the difference between these organizations. So that's my 2 cents. And then Tina, I would love to understand more about the first and second slate that you just said.
Oh, yes. So I can tell. So currently, so last year I was on this committee that did this part too, and for the most part, everyone we didn't have excess candidates to spaces. So we recommended everyone that was qualified essentially. The committee this year, they discussed different things. We had actually, I believe, 7 at-large candidates, or maybe 8, and so it was not obviously that everyone goes through kind of situation. We had to do a lot of discussions and going through, like you said, that we have a matrix that says what we're looking for and all that. And then we had 1 business association apply and 1 community organization apply. And we have 2 openings for each of those sorts of positions. So typically in the past, we would say, oh, they're interested in joining, and we can get a little bit from them. They can get a little bit from us. This is a good match. This committee was more wanting to push back on quality candidates, or not quality of what they know, what they don't know. So unfortunately, like I said, last year we just were like, yes, people want in, and we took you because we wanted people, we wanted to fill our board seats, and put a great, and I knew you too, Amy, so I knew you were great. but everyone has turned out to be great anyway. But yeah, so it had changed a little bit because we've got a different committee and we're trying to have a larger process that will be written down essentially. Like one of the things Ruben said earlier was that we don't have that much institutional knowledge. And because of that, we need to start having solid processes. And that's kind of what we were trying to get to through that. And tell me if you think that sounds about right, Stephanie.
Yeah, I would say so. And this, if it looks like it's a new like regulation, your organization has to have been around a certain time. I don't think it's necessarily meant to be any kind of exclusion. It was a sort of just a read of the situation and not based on a whole lot of history. So I think we need to maybe reconstruct our history of how the non-neighborhood association board members have been selected, even just a list of who they've been over time. We're kind of a little behind on that committee process, but we're willing to be overridden. We are only a committee. We made a recommendation for 4 candidates that everybody felt really strongly about, and we were split on the community organization one, and we just didn't feel good with that kind of a split to recommend it in the same way as the other 4. But this is why we bring this to the board now.
To move this along, can I just make a motion we adopt our recommendation and see how it flies?
Hold on. I still had a couple of hands. Himachu's hand was up and now it's gone.
Sorry, Quincy's been wanting to ask a question.
Okay, it was Quincy's hand. Go ahead, Quincy.
Yeah, mine has to do with the selection process for the 4 candidates. I know, and maybe I might be wrong, but I think that in the last meeting we talked about how the board would be able to see all the candidates that were going to be potential chosen, and then the committee would kind of choose the 4 best candidates. Are we still able to see all the candidates that were applied, to see kind of what the process was in selecting? Because I know I'm a little, just from personal experience, it can be sometimes hard to increase diversity and equity goals without kind of having a full review of the hiring process. And so I guess I would like to kind of see what gist of people of color, women, and queer people, that kind of stuff that were in the beginning of the hiring process, and how many of those people were able to advance to like the selection round.
So one of the questions is like what kind, I believe it's like what kind of diversity you bring to it, because we don't want to just ask this, we ask them to tell us what their diversity is. I think that's the question. And Leroy emailed out a list of all of the people and short little summaries of them.
I did, and I just sent it to you again, Quincy, just in case we missed you on Friday.
But I think, Quincy, you raised another really good process point that we should add to the board development committee work, especially when we reconstruct the history. We don't have that kind of data. We don't have those stats, and we should have them. So that's something to be adding into our work. We did have a fairly diverse pool, though. I mean, of course, there were more white people, but we feel like we had some age range, we had some neighborhood range, we had some diversity in gender, ethnicity, cultural backgrounds. It could be more, and we did more recruitment than sometimes in the past, but we definitely need to do even more. So we figure this is a place to build from. But your question really raises more good work for us to do.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay. Let's do. Wait, sorry. Go ahead, Quincy.
Oh yeah, I just think it's important to see, if as an institution we're attempting to kind of advance D&I work, that we have that structure in place to see kind of over the next couple of years if we're actually achieving that goal.
Absolutely. Machu.
So, as I'm understanding it, we will have a vacancy on the board. What opportunities are there to fill that vacancy throughout the year, or is it happening today and not again until a year later?
Nope. So our bylaws state that if there is an open position that we can fill it. And one of the things that I want this committee to do is come up with a procedure, because there were people in the middle of the cycle that had requested to be on the board, but we didn't have a process. I'd even asked past chairs. They didn't remember any of that happening before. So we kind of had to wait till this moment, and now we'll be able to create a process. So going forward, we will be able to bring people on mid-year. Anna, real quick.
Yeah, in terms of filling the position, we had a lot of connections with other organizations, or at least I had. And, you know, we are in a really awkward moment right now where people are really hesitant to commit to certain things. But there is a lot of interest to collaborate with Southeast Uplift from a lot of diversity groups who are working with Hispanic people on health issues. Renters organizations are interested in participating. But they didn't want to commit right now because there were some issues of individuals saying like, I have to check with my organization. I don't know if they allow me to. So I had a lot of back and forth with that. So I think we really need to figure out a process of how to do that this year if there are things coming later in the fall.
So, and part of the problem, I think, too, is we just have a small window that we do outreach, at least the committees do. And so if we're doing that throughout the year, or like, you know, we'll be more accessible maybe for people to follow up with us, or maybe we'll check back when they said, oh, I wasn't sure in July, but now it's September, maybe, you know, check back and say, hey, how about now? Would you be interested too? So, all right. And then there was a question on the process. Is that what you're going to talk to, Alan? Are you ready to?
Well, I was just going to say with Anna, if we open this up later in the year, then we have to open it up to other organizations.
If we have positions, we need to try to fill them though.
No.
So
I just want to say, I put out a motion on the table.
Yep, so I was going to explain, because someone asked me to re-explain this, Amy did. So we have the slate of recommended candidates, there's 4 of them. There's been another discussion that Ruben brought up to begin with, to have a slate with 5 candidates. So if you want, but we wanted to vote for the recommended slate first. So if you want the slate of 5 candidates, the first slate you would vote no for. And I'm trying to see how many people we have. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. I think 16, Leroy's are 16 people.
I got 17. Well, that's counting you though. So 16, not counting you.
Oh, I counted me though. Okay, I'm missing someone. Hold on. Sorry, guys.
I have a really quick question. Am I allowed to vote on this one or no? Just because I do know that I do have a lot of people in the applications because I did a lot of networking for this. So I just want to know, is that considered a conflict of interest or not? Yeah.
No, you're fine. That's not a conflict of interest. We had people on the committee too that also did recruiting. So Miguel, thanks for your recruiting because you brought us some wonderful applicants. But yep, you can completely vote.
Okay, sounds good.
Oh, were you counting Estefania?
I was, yes.
That's why.
That's why.
All right. So is it understood then what we'll do? We'll do the vote for the 4 candidates. Jesse.
Someone in the comments is asking if anyone on the call can vote.
No, this is only board members. Thank you. Even though it's up over here, I'm not looking at it, so.
Can you phrase it in a motion and we need a second, Tina, for doing anything?
Well, I'm not putting the motion forward. Someone else needs to. Oh, you put it forward, didn't you?
I'll make a motion. We adopt the recommendation of the committee, and if it fails, then we go to the second round.
Okay, Stephanie seconded it. Hold on, someone's in the waiting room.
I got it.
Okay, I don't know who that is. Okay. All right, so we'll go through the list again. All right. Hopefully it's clear for everyone. Pam.
Aye.
Lotus.
To be clear, you're right now, sorry, just to be clear, we're voting with going forward with the original committee's recommendation.
Correct.
Okay.
Lotus.
Aye.
Dave. Is Dave still here?
Sorry, yes, yes.
So is that yes, you're still here? Yes.
I'm voting aye.
The 4. Okay.
I apologize.
Quincy.
Quincy had to go to another meeting. He said in the chat he'd like to vote abstain from voting on this slate.
Okay. Lindsay.
Aye.
Sam. Sam.
Sam, you have to unmute.
No.
Stephanie.
Aye.
Alan.
Yes.
Ruben.
Is that me? No.
Anna.
Yes.
Jesse.
No.
Amy.
No.
Amber.
No.
Kat.
Aye.
Miguel.
No.
All right. Okay, I've got 8 for, 6 against, and 1 abstention. That sound right?
That's what I got.
Okay.
Can I vote?
Oh, Machu, how come you're not on my list?
I know. Please add me. I'm voting no.
That's 7 against. Did I miss anyone else?
I'm confused. Is Estefania able to vote or not?
No, she switched her from her committee or from her thing to at large. So that's kind of how it ended up.
Quick question. Who seconded that motion?
I believe Stephanie did.
Anna, right?
Oh,
Anna?
No, I did.
Stephanie did real quick before her.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, so that is the slate of 4 passes.
Yeah, can I just ask a quick clarification
Yes.
question on Estefania? So
Yes, thank you.
he is moving to a new board position. I guess we just didn't renew her in the beginning of the meeting, which probably, I guess maybe would have made sense because then she would have been a board member throughout the whole board meeting and then just transferred into a new position. But we didn't do that, so okay.
Yeah, this was a really weird. So for all of you too, in the past, what we've done is we've only had like a specific people that we were recommending. We'd invite them to the meeting, and then we'd vote, and they'd be board members right then. We were looking. It's really weird with the board with the bylaws stating that they're only board members until June 30th. So we kind of were trying to walk that fine line and making sure everything was right with the bylaws. And so we decided that the ones that we voted for tonight, we would let them know tomorrow, and then they could be, the first meeting would be the September meeting. So if it's confusing to people that it was different than it was last time, that's what happened.
And that was also so they could have some onboarding training, because we lose valuable time when people come on and don't know anything about the organization. So we're trying to, that's another part of the upgrade here, is standardizing that and doing a good job with making sure everybody can be an effective board member when they do arrive to a meeting.
Yes, okay, cool. All right, so then what is the next agenda item?
So is the DEIA statements that we sent out to the board. So I invite Amber to join in at any time in case I miss anything. Let me start the presentation. Okay, so this is like a work group task force that came together over half a year ago. to work on increasing the diversity, equity, inclusion, as well as accessibility. We'll get into the definitions on the next slide, what that means. So these definitions come from Pacific University in Oregon. Diversity includes the wide variety of shared and different personal and group characteristics among human beings. Equity takes into consideration the fact that the social identities affect equality. In an equitable environment, an individual or group would be given what was needed to succeed. Inclusion, authentically bringing traditional excluded individuals and groups into processes, activities, and decision policymaking in a way that shares power. I know like these are things that the board development committee is kind of like grappling right now. So this is a very relevant discussion to what we're dealing with. And accessibility, this is kind of a new one. I hadn't heard this until this work group brought it up. And it is like the extent to which a facility is readily approachable and usable by individuals with disabilities, particularly such areas as the residence halls, classrooms, and public areas. Again, this definition came from the university, but for Southeast Uplift, we talk about this a lot when we talk about if you're mobily diverse, how do you get into our office? And significant upgrades have happened the past couple of years to increase accessibility, but you know, there's more discussion about what could be done. So the work group was led by Cliff Jones of Capacity Building Partnerships. He worked with staff and board members in developing the statement, Cove Ethics and Equity Lens. He has over 30 years of experience in capacity building and partnerships in organizational development, including strategic planning, board development, cross-cultural effectiveness, team building, staff development, and civic engagement. Great fellow. If you ever get the opportunity to work with him, I highly recommend it. Inspirational guy, just very thoughtful, his process. So this is from the equity statement. Southeast Uplift brings together vibrant communities across Southeast Portland and beyond to create everlasting change. We recognize that our actions influence the social, political, and environmental fabric of our communities. Our intention is to engage and collaborate with all members of our community. So like, why now? Like, why would we bring this up? Well, Portland today is different than it has been in the past. So like what might have worked, let's say in the 1980s or the 1970s, probably shouldn't be the same process we use in the future and going forward as Portland continues to grow and change. And we also want to make sure that we have equitable access of resources for all members of the community to succeed with. And just as a helpful reminder, Southeast Uplift is a leader of civic engagement and continues to build grassroots participation for all members of the community. And also, this is particularly relevant given the COVID pandemic and plummeting finances, but the city is facing a budget shortfall. And if we position ourselves to be aligned with the prioritized funding that the city is using when it evaluates continuing its projects and funding for programs, we will be in a better place to continue doing what we do if we align better with what the city's prioritizing moving forward. And this is just one example. It's just one example of how Portland has changed in 3 decades. Like in 1980, 80% of the city was identified as white. By 2010, it was just over 70%. So while like the white population has grown, so too have non-white populations. And as what worked in 1980 may no longer be the best tool for 2010 perhaps, but we can work to make changes to that. But this is just one example. There's many more, such as like the increase in people that rent as opposed to own homes. Again, like countless examples we could use here. But this is an opportunity, right? Like if we are a leader among district coalition offices, Civic Life looks to us and other DCOs for input on how to implement its programs. With a commitment to center historically underserved communities, Southeast Uplift can innovate and be a model for inclusive participatory civic engagement. Together with the DEI statement, Cove Ethics and Equity Lens, we can establish a framework to implement diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility within the mission, our conduct, and our decision-making processes, and bring the community together in conversation, programs, and collaboration, thus serving our mission. So these went out to the group. Let me do a time check, 8:23. Okay, I think we're going slightly over. So hopefully you had time to review these.
We started 10 minutes late with Mo, so.
Okay. So this is the equity statement. Some really great conversations happened around this, but like, what do we hope to achieve with equity? Like, why will this bring our community together? Why will it strengthen our outreach? And how will it invite more people into the conversation so that we can truly act as a conduit of sharing information to the broader Southeast community and soliciting feedback to the city as well. But some of this has come with like historical practices and policies, such as, like redlining as one example, that have created barriers to how people have been able to access the systems, which produces negative and unfair outcomes. And we want to create a more fair outcome, so we can build informed, inclusive, and participatory neighborhoods that include everyone in the community. Some examples of the barriers include institutionalized racism, privilege, other forms of bias such as sexism, distrust of systems, social stigmas, cost, language, physical space, transportation, and culture. So if we begin to address these internally, we can begin to better support the social and ecological well-being of all our communities. So try to be really respectful of your time. Again, these went out to the board earlier in the week, so I'm going to kind of move through this a little more quickly in order to allow time for the other agenda items we have. And one thing that's key to realize here is that a one-size-fits-all approach doesn't necessarily work for every organization or group. And sometimes we need different strategies and different approaches, and that's okay. Diversity makes us stronger and more inclusive. So again, with the Code of Ethics, the purpose of this document is intended for the Southeast Uplift and its partners to align everyone's behavior so we can have a better baseline of understanding of how we foster equity and justice together and build a stronger community together. This builds off our original mission statement, which is to collaborate with the Southeast Portland community to build informed, inclusive, and participatory neighborhoods that support our social and ecological well-being. So it continues with our values, which you can find right now on the Southeast Uplift website, about relationship building, community involvement, grassroots democracy, sharing, teaching, and learning, diversity and inclusion, or inclusiveness, and building capacity. And to each of these statements or values, the diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility, we've made a few points to help orient how we approach this. Just kind of establishes like a shared understanding of how we respect and engage with each other and our community partners within Southeast Uplift. Again, with equity, just treating each person with dignity and respect, and understand that differences happen, and that can mean different things for different people. And, just doing what we can to give people the tools they need to succeed and be fully participatory members in our civic model. And like, discomfort will arise from conflict. That's okay, because these are opportunities for how we could be more robust and inclusive. Just something to keep in mind as we have sometimes difficult conversations. Inclusion. This is really key and something that Southeast Uplift has really grappled with for the past few years about how we increase inclusion. And part of that is like the code of conduct that we have at our meetings about like stepping forward when we haven't been speaking much, so we have an opportunity to participate, and stepping back when more people need space to have equitable access to the meetings, because these are limited times and we need to be more equitable in our approach. And just creating language that's more easier to understand by everyone. Access. And again, this access is kind of a new concept because we've all heard about DEI. The access is, how do we make sure that our meetings are accessible? And like these Zoom meetings are a great example of that. People can log in from elsewhere. And I hope to continue that practice as we move out of the pandemic. But also understand that not all disabilities are visible, and sometimes we have to be really flexible in how we accommodate people, just because it's not always clear at first sight what their needs might be. And also that we are an organization of limited resources, so we will make reasonable accommodations, but we can't always guarantee those accommodations all the time at every single function. Just to keep in mind so we have realistic expectations about what we can affect within the organization. Okay, an equity lens. I'm really excited about this. This is to help us inform our decision making. Like when we have proposals, policies, programs, resources, and partnerships, how do we make sure that it's equitable for all Portland communities? So we can use this when we make decisions, when we develop policies, programs, practices, and we're trying to grapple with biased behavior. How do we move forward from these situations? And it has instructions on how to use the lens, about having a person facilitate it, reviewing some documents that I've shared with you, including a glossary of terms, so we have a shared understanding of what words we're using. The cool thing is like clarify next steps and solicit feedback when evaluating the lens review. So that way, this is a process. This isn't a prescriptive end. It's more an ongoing conversation about how we engage both within the board and the community at large. So like, for example, based on a discussion from the equity lens, this is question 6, what changes would you recommend to support more equitable outcomes? By like actively thinking about this in our internal processes, we can begin to affect more equitable outcomes by changing how we evaluate things internally. All right, and that was it. Thank you.
Thanks, Machu. Was there anything you guys wanted to add about like the whole idea behind this, or?
The idea with this work that we have been doing for the last several months, I will say probably 8 months, is to bring these documents to the board, and I want to make a motion to adopt these documents as part of the things that are part of SE Uplift. Is an addition to what we have already, as Machu mentioned. This is something that is gonna put the same language into everything we do with an equity lens, and I think it's really important that we adopt this as part of what SE Uplift is.
Okay, so that was the motion. Do we have a second?
Yeah, I second that motion.
Is that Lotus?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, make sure you keep those minutes. You seconded it. All right, is there any discussion? Alan?
Yeah, that was a great presentation. Thanks, Machu. Yeah, I think this is generally a good product, but this is for me just a lot to digest and a lot I don't understand and would like more understanding. Like, I'll just go through my list of when it says community partners. I don't know what the partners are. Is that anyone who we fiscally sponsor? I'll just go through my list. On the equity inclusion, there's like access when it says number 4, Southeast Portland boundaries. So that means everyone in Southeast, and it's not Southeast Uplift boundaries, because there's 2 different things. Because our boundaries kind of go into Northeast a little bit. I have just questions about some terms on this. So I don't want to go into all of them. But for me, on the Southeast Uplift Diversity, Equity, Inclusion, Accessibility statement, I would like ageism to be put in there as one of the barriers. And phrases like interrupting systems of oppression, distrust of systems, social stigmas, costs. I'm just a little unclear what that is, not having sat in on those committee meetings. On the code of ethics, is that something we're supposed to sign? Is that something staff is supposed to sign? Everyone in our Southeast boundaries is supposed to comply with? And on the equity lens, I mean, that's where I had the last section, how to use this lens. I was reading through that, and I couldn't picture what the process is. Is it that on any key organizational decision, we have to create a separate equity lens review group? And then that means we have meetings before we can present an item to the agenda. I didn't know how that whole section worked at all. And I need clarification on how that section works, how to use this lens.
Yeah, those are great questions, Alan. Thank you for raising them, because I think there are opportunities to revise those documents and make it more clear and instructive and helpful, because that's the purpose of them.
So to answer some questions, this has been an ongoing discussion with this task force, as we call it. And the idea is that there's some of the questions are really specific. So community partners are all the community partners that Southeast Uplift engage in different aspects, in programmatic aspects, and as well as the board and in different partnerships. It could be basically any community that we engage with. The idea is that we have that equity lens in every engagement that we do. Axis, Southeast boundaries, that means, yes, everyone who is in Southeast, including all the neighborhoods associations that belong to Southeast Uplift. There's some terms, yes. There's going to be a glossary of terms that we're going to present on September, on the September board meeting. So probably we can discuss more of those specific terms on that meeting, so we can take note and include them in the glossary of terms and in the presentations that are going to follow. This is not just one time discussion that we want to have, because this is a long process. And the idea is that there's going to be a committee of DEIA committee that is going to be formed with members of Southeast Uplift, and they are the ones who are going to implement the equity lens. And it's basically every time we have a change of policy, a new program, a new development inside a new committee that is taking decisions, that equity lens should be implemented during those times. So this is not just this conversation, it's going to be an ongoing conversation. And part of the work that this task force is doing is continue developing documents and procedures that are going to enforce all this work inside Southeast Uplift, including the creation of the South DEIA committee.
Okay, we've got a couple of questions. Lotus, go ahead.
Thanks. It's actually just more of a comment that, you know, I read these when they were emailed out before. And I just want to say, I think it's really great work, and thank you guys for doing it. Yeah, I think it's really cool, and hope to study it closely, and also possibly take some of it to my neighborhood association, because I think these are things that more organizations should just be doing. So I just want to commend you on the work, and I know it was a lot of work. So yeah, thank you.
Cool. Yes, thanks, Stephanie. Real quick. Oh, you're muted.
I have two questions. One is has the staff reviewed this, and do we have some kind of input from the staff and the ED to know how this works, interfaces? And the other one is, I've never seen a code of ethics for an organization stated in I terms, and it seems like it should be stated in we, because the ethics are representing what the organization is going to do. So I don't understand that. I'm not really comfortable voting on it, because it doesn't seem to line up to me. And so I would have, that's my biggest question, because it seems like a statement for the organization. But I think I would second Alan's earlier suggestion that there's a lot of material here, and maybe it's even worthy of a 6 to 7 workshop kind of training before the September meeting.
And there are some staff members on the call, if one of them wants to take that.
So I've participated more recently since I came to Sewell and on the Diversity, Equity, Inclusion, and Access work group, task force. And and I'm not the only one. Christina's participated, Moose when he was here participated, and then Maria and Leah as well. So pretty much all of us have been participating. So very supportive of the work that's been done. We got to be a part of all of it. And I shared a little bit last time that, you know, it was a really amazing process and everybody got a chance to contribute. We certainly were guided well by our consultant. And, you know, in particular, Stephanie, your question on, you know, the code of ethics. I mean, yes, that's the overall statement, and we would adapt it for practical use. And Alan, to your point, yes, it would be something that we would expect board members to sign, but I think it's also something we would expect staff to sign. It's something as the executive director that I would expect. I know the staff believes in the work that was done, and they stand behind it. I would just caution, I think a lot of work's been done, and I think that, you know, deferring this to a later date, I think would be a little unfortunate for the work that's been created by the committee. I think they genuinely worked hard to bring this forward and present it to you tonight.
Okay, so where we stand, we had, oh, Anna, can you be quick?
Yeah, I have a very quick question. So thank you. It's really great work. I really appreciate it. I have one question. Are we going to have a certain kind of programming that we are actually talking about, how it works and how certain concepts are playing out? Because I run into those questions much more than on this kind of, you know, you get people much more agreeing to a code of ethics, but then there's a real problem of implementing it and talking about it and behaving accordingly. And I would highly recommend that we have some workshops or programming that actually implements some kind of interactive ways of getting to learn how that works, because there's so much fear in the society. I run into that with my students all the time, that they are not speaking up because they think they're going to say something wrong.
It's a good point, Anna, and I think there is an opportunity for us to use our consultant to do some key training for the board if they would like, and even for a broader community if that's desired. But yes, I think we have that ability down the road, you bet.
Okay, so we're getting away. So Alan, are you okay if we just vote?
Well, I'd like to add a comment.
Well, quick then.
Okay. Well, since one, I think we need to, I'd like to wait till we see the glossary to see how words are defined before we vote on it. But I would like to add some things. I think we need something to get at a little bit of conflict resolution, how this organization deals with conflict. And personally, a statement that when there's conflict or disputes, we should make best efforts to resolve these privately and quietly and seek full review of both sides of an issue of a dispute. I'd like to add that to it. So how do we amend this? If we adopt it tonight, how do we amend this? Does it take 2/3 vote?
Good question.
Like, is this a standing rule? Our bylaws don't talk about standing rules.
I think they do.
Yeah, I don't think, Alan, you're adopting it as a standing rule. I think the board, if they take action tonight, are recognizing these 3 documents that are coming out of the work group, or the task force, the DEIA work group. And I think those are amendable down the road. I mean, you're accepting those documents. You should, as a board, to be able to amend those if you need to down the road. I think we've also talked a lot about at the work group level that these are living documents, and we're going to learn as we work our way through them. And they're going to need updates, and as time goes by.
Okay, let's. Anna, you already spoke on this. Miguel.
I'm going to just be really quick about this, but in terms of a lot of equity work and the work that I've been doing, one of the biggest barriers to equity work itself is that people get stuck on the terms and the logistics of it. You're going to make mistakes and you're going to have to take risks. I'm not saying everybody needs to just be like, screw it and let's just adopt every single thing. So I would actually just be pretty straightforward that we need to make sure, to Alan's point, that these are living documents that are amendable. However, we shouldn't, just wait until the next time to implement them, because that in itself just becomes a crutch. It becomes this idea of like, until we get it right, until we get it perfect, until it's exactly how we want it to be done. And if anything that the Black Lives Matter movement and other social movements has taught us is that we can't just keep waiting until the right moment to do something. We need to do it. So in terms of like these specific documents, I would be okay with them being a motion to approve, but with the idea, to Alan's point, that yes, they are amendable and we're going to have to grow into it though. It's not going to be perfect. So that's just what I want to say right now, because it's just never going to be perfect. And we could, go down the rabbit hole of like, how come this term is being used here and how come it's not being used here, etc. Or the definition I saw in a different text or something. That is a barrier to equity work as well.
Okay, so are we ready to vote? Hi, Christina. Did you want to say something?
Yeah, I just wanted to answer the training question that I heard. The DIA work group and staff, we've talked about providing training down the line, but we want to make sure that it's the right training that is going to be most effective for our community. So we're just really being deliberate and careful about the training that's coming, but we will have an education plan coming up in the near future.
Cool. All right, let's do this vote then. We'll start at the top. Pam. So here. So this
Was
is,
there a motion second?
This is, yeah, this is to adopt the 3 documents that were emailed out earlier on the DEI from the DEIA work group. Sorry, go ahead, Pam.
Aye.
Lotus.
Aye.
Dave.
Aye.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear him. You said
Aye.
Aye, thank you. And you said, is Quincy still on, right? Lindsay.
Sorry, trying to unmute. Aye.
Thanks. Machu.
Aye.
Sam.
Aye.
Stephanie.
Aye.
Alan.
I'm going to abstain. I'm just most confused on how to use this lens
Ruben.
section.
Aye.
Anna.
Aye.
Jesse.
Aye.
Amy.
You.
Amy, you want to just nod?
I said I
I
just
couldn't hear.
slightly, I guess. Sorry.
Ember.
Aye.
Kat.
Aye.
Miguel.
Yes.
All right, that passes. Budget. Let's get to it.
Yeah, let's move. Okay. All right. So as last month you saw, we presented and just a quick presentation of the budget. But as you know, there were some changes that happened. So let me bring up my screen. Can everyone see my PowerPoint presentation?
No,
No?
no, it's a blank.
Okay. It's still blank there?
Yes.
All right, we'll try again. There it goes. Okay, is that working?
Yes.
Okay, so I'll be fairly quick on this. The big change in the presentation from last month is that we're receiving a little bit less money in our contract agreement with Civic Life. And here you can see just kind of overall the timeline in the budget process, which takes us up to where we are tonight. We did go back to the Finance Committee with these new numbers, and they agreed to move them forward. We have a couple different things that you're considering tonight. One is this overall budget, and I also have the draft agreement from Civic Life as well, and the dollar amounts match up to that agreement. Here's our new proposed revenue at $523,956. That's down a little bit from the last time because those numbers changed from Civic Life. So let me close this a little bit. So our overall revenue did decrease by about $19,435 over last year's budget. Again, that's largely due to the Civic Life Agreement coming in at the same amount as last year. If you remember that originally they had proposed that we were going to receive an increase. And of course, with all the impacts of budget impacts due to COVID-19 to City of Portland, that number has come back down to $475,000. And it's also going to come without any small grant funding. But I will talk to you a little bit later in this presentation about creating our own small grant funding program, of which the Finance Committee has supported. You've seen this before. We did drop our meeting room rent for next year a little bit, given that we know there's going to be some COVID impacts there. We did increase some revenue from fiscal sponsorship. We are still working with the Finance Committee on that policy. They looked at a draft this last month, and they've asked us to make some changes, so we will do that. And then there's our tenant rent at $40,000, a little bit less than we probably could have brought in, but again, we're having impacts with some of our tenant rent due to the health crisis. Our total expenses are $523,224. It's an overall 3% drop compared to last year's budget. And our proposed expenses, probably no surprise to you, our personnel costs are 59% of our overall total expenses. There's our expenses on a pie chart. So you can see those personnel costs. They're the highest at 59%. And then you just see our other categories there across the pie chart. What were our strategic investments that we proposed to the Finance Committee? There are three things. One, that we're creating a land use and transportation leadership stipend program, and we funded that at $5,000. We're also proposing to create a Sewell only, it's a Sewell sponsored small grant program for $20,000. We recognize that Civic Life can't provide grant funding for us this year, but we also know that our small grant program is one of our best ways to reach out and uplift the community. So we want to be able to fund that. And really that we're able to do this because I'm proposing not to fill Moose's position, given that we've had some other program decreases in the community cleanup program, for example. So we'll bring a part-time person in, and it leaves us a little bit of money to fund the small grant program. And then we're also proposing to grow the communication grants by $3,000, recognizing that also is an excellent way for us to work with the community. I'll go through these just really quickly. I won't go into all the details because you saw them last time, but our personnel costs are coming in at $310,000, $600,000. That's in the budget. You can see some other things in here. What has changed is we're not proposing any COLA, cost of living allowance for staff, given that we did not get the increase from Civic Life that was originally talked about. Our administrative costs are $24,860. And you can see some of the details there. I'm just going quickly, given time. Insurance costs, $21,800. A little bit of a decrease on our budget, better reflects the actual spending for insurance. Utility at $12,200, a little bit of increase over last year. That's mostly to reflect the actual costs on utilities. Building and maintenance, a little bit up over last year. And primarily that's our janitorial costs have gone up a little bit. And we also are spending a little bit more on repairs and maintenance as we want to make sure our building is taken care of. Professional services, we're proposing $50,000. That's, it's decreased a little bit from last year's budget. The big part of that is that you're not doing an ED search this year. Remember, that was about $10,000. But what I did add into the budget is about $3,000 for our strategic plan. And primarily I put that in there for facilitation. I think we can do a lot of that work in-house, but we may need some facilitation assistance there. Our program expenses, we're proposing $51,600. It's a slight increase over last year. And this is where we've increased our communication funds, created the Sewell Small Grant Program, and the Land Use and Transportation Leadership Stipend Program. So that's really our strategic moves in our budget. And you've seen this budget monitoring process before. So this is, we do this throughout the year and working with our Finance Committee. So with that, that's a quick budget presentation. I also have an Excel spreadsheet. I won't go into that in detail, but I do want to be able to show you just quickly the agreement. So let me, my screen shared again here.
Tina, FYI, Estefania has a question in the chat.
I was just responding. Thank you.
And excuse me here for a second, just trying to get this thing to share. Okay, can you see the agreement now?
Yes.
Okay, thanks. So this is just quickly the agreement that we've seen received from Civic Life. It's a draft agreement, hasn't been approved by City Council. That's been delayed a few times. But they've asked us to have our boards approve these agreements. A lot of this language is very similar to last year. So I'm not going to go over it in obviously any detail. We sent this to you in advance. The section that has come into question by some coalitions, and I definitely offered my recommendation to Civic Life, is this section 25 that talks about termination or amendment by failure to receive adequate funding. That gives the city the flexibility to terminate this agreement if they need to, if they receive less funding for Civic Life in general in the next fiscal year. This agreement also has another portion of it as well that allows them to terminate this agreement. So in some ways this is redundant, but they were also trying to be more specific to impacts that might happen this next year. You saw in the back part of this, hopefully this is our scope of work that we submitted. That was required as a part of this agreement. And then the dollar amount in here matches up with the dollar amount that's been plugged into the budget for the dollars we're going to receive from Civic Life. So I'm going to stop sharing from there. Again, the Finance Committee has recommended approval of both the budget that I presented to you and the Civic Life agreement. So I'm probably going to pass it over to Ambar as the chair of the Finance Committee, hoping that she may have a motion for us to move forward.
Yes, I have a motion for the board to approve the budget as presented by Leroy today and the draft agreement from the contract with the city.
I second.
Thank you, Anna.
So I don't want to interrupt all this, but it's kind of awkward, and we were talking about this earlier. Is there anyone opposed to seating Estefania right now so she can continue to vote as a board member? Since she is a board member, she has been a board member. She just switched from her.
Motion, we sit her.
Thank you, Machu. A second. A second to seat Estefania.
I'll second it.
Thanks, Sam. All right, I'll go through real quick. On this one, Pam. Is Pam here? All right, we'll go back. Lotus.
Yes.
Dave.
Yes.
Lindsay.
Yes.
Sam.
Yes.
Stephanie.
Yes.
Alan.
He said yes.
Okay. Ruben. Anna.
Yes.
He'll get to it, I know. Jesse.
Yes.
Amy.
Yes.
Amber.
Yes.
Kat.
Yes.
Miguel.
Yes.
Machu.
Aye.
Ruben, you still, oh no, he's back. He's muted again. Okay, thanks. Okay, now Stefania can vote for the budget. All right, we're ready for the budget vote. And again, Pam. She's not here. I'm not. Oh. Lotus.
Aye.
Dave.
Yes.
Lindsay.
Yes.
Sam.
Yes.
Stephanie.
Yes.
Alan.
Yes.
Ruben.
Yes.
Anna.
Yes.
Jesse.
Yes.
Mimi.
Yes.
Amber.
Yes.
Kat,
Yes.
Miguel,
Yes.
Machu.
Yes.
All right. Budget passed.
Thank you, everybody.
Sorry, everyone, for this taking so long. Okay. All right.
Vote on that one?
Oh, yeah. Sorry. See, I didn't have your name on here. Estefania.
Yes.
Long week. It's Monday. Okay. Thank you. And I'm spelling your name properly from now on. Okay. All right. This last item. We are on the last one, right? Okay. It is the trespass letter. Everyone has had the information. Everyone has read the letters.
Right.
All right. I don't have, Leroy, do you have I don't have in front of me the order of the speakers.
We put it in there, Alan, myself, and then Kat and Crystal.
Okay. Thank you.
Did you see that Pam's in the waiting room?
Yeah, I let her in. Thanks.
Thank you.
It's hard to keep track. Okay. And then okay. I guess let's just start then. And I'm going to put my timer on 10 minutes. All right. Alan, you are up first.
Okay, this should focus on what happened March 10th, whether that justified a 12-week ban from Southeast Uplift board meetings in the building, and our bylaws and city rules require all meetings to be open to everybody. Our rules do not allow outright banning people. We wanted to learn about the group and their two projects near us on the agenda. One was the Sewell co-hosted Hawthorne workshop. I was kicked out of the meeting as soon as I got there. In the hallway said it was a private meeting. The next day, so did Leroy. I wasn't angry. I was polite, respectful, and composed. There's nothing in Leroy's letter, Kat's March 10th email, or their statements that say otherwise. Brian was upset and argued it was a public meeting, but he was not aggressive at all. When Crystal suddenly blurted out, "Step back," it got weird and we left. It's clear from Kat's email and Leroy's letter, the disruption wasn't anything we did in the meeting. Simply trying to attend the meeting was a disruption. Our presence would have made them feel uncomfortable. Leroy never asked me why we went to the meeting. He never even spoke with Brian. He assumes we had no reason for attending, that we only wanted to make others feel uncomfortable. To assign that bad motive to me, he made the defaming statement that I have a long history of engaging in harassment-like, intimidating, and bullish behavior. Do you realize how forever damaging that is to my character and reputation, to me personally? By publicizing it to the world, by using the wrong email listserv, it is forever out there. Every client I have, every job I apply for, it's out there. Crystal is now spreading it on Nextdoor. Leah shared his letters with an NA chair who sent it to 3 other chairs. This will forever damage you professionally and personally. Words matter. There's a reason why there are laws against defamation. Pure opinion is not actionable, but statements of fact are. The director serves at the direction and control of the board. Under Oregon law, as board members, we have fiduciary duties of obedience to follow our bylaws, ONI standards, and open meeting rules, and duty of due care to independently discharge our duties and not just rubber stamp or do what the director says. Under these duties, we are required to follow our rules, which require all SEW board meetings to be open to everyone. The chair can include someone during a meeting for disruptive behavior after giving them a warning, but neither the chair nor the director can prospectively ban people from meetings. Leroy exceeded his authority with the trespass letter. The Walsh case is very relevant. It didn't involve ONI standards or our bylaws, but its principles apply here where all board members, like council meetings, are open to everyone. The judge stated, to paraphrase, the chair can maintain decorum in meetings by ordering a disruptive individual to leave. That does not require prospective exclusions from a forum intended for public discourse and debate. A contrary rule might lead to banning people with viewpoints one finds annoying, distasteful, or unpopular. Exclusions for past disruptive behavior or based on hearsay stories could be a convenient guise for censoring criticism or different opinions. The letter runs counter to these principles when Sewell is trying to increase inclusiveness, accessibility, and diversity of voices and perspectives. If trying to attend a public meeting can itself be called a disruption, and if people can be banned from meetings simply based on hearsay stories of bad acts or being a bad person outside of Sewell meetings where their presence might make people feel uncomfortable, it's too easy to exclude people to quiet their voices and perspectives. This is not a good precedent for Sewell to be establishing. Are you going to sign off on this policy of exclusion the letter sets that is so contrary to the goals and principles in the Code of Ethics and DEIA documents we just adopted? Before and after the letter, the standard applied to me has been guilty until proven innocent. I was tried, convicted, and sentenced in the back rooms of Sewell on stories told behind my back Evidence I've never seen and can't respond to. Evidence you've never seen. Due process is still lacking. When 4 women, all on this call, offered evidence in my defense by describing what really happened with the RNA, they're described as aggressively targeting Leroy in a form of harassment. You won't give me, the board, any of the evidence he relied on, or me, not even the other emails he had with Kat or Crystal quoted in his June 4th letter. If anyone's been aggressively targeted, it's me, which started after the 2000 grievance. With your fiduciary duties, you are the jury. You have to independently decide this issue and not just follow Leroy's directions. Are you going to sign your name to and rubber stamp that letter and sentence me to live forever under that defaming statement on evidence I've never seen, that you've never seen, and sanction exclusionary bans? And you even say what specific bad acts I've supposedly committed? I can't. The trespass letter and the emails rely on vague, unsubstantiated statements and innuendo, verbally aggressive, display of past hostility, provocative gestures. And now Kat says I have Rasputin-like powers over my neighbors, turning them into minions to harass her. Am I going to be convicted on this kind of evidence? I can promise not to attend their meetings. I'm really sorry I went to the meeting, but please, I ask you, retract the letter and so we can move beyond this and work on repairing the relationship.
Thank you. You had 4 seconds to spare.
I know.
I knew you had it figured out. Okay. Leroy, are you ready?
I am, yeah. This should go quicker than 5 minutes. So first off, board, I'm sorry this has taken your time and attention away from more important board topics. I stand by my trespass decision. I believe today it was the right decision, and I would make that decision all over again if presented the same situation. This topic has taken a lot of time for me that I wish I could have spent working on the strategic plan and doing other good work for Sewell, but it has really gobbled up a lot of time. I feel strongly that it's my responsibility as executive director to make Sewell a safe and welcoming environment, and that was my intent, and still is my intent today. And that was my goal in keeping Sewell a safe place. I have to say, never in my 28 years of working with and being on boards, councils, and commissions have I seen such inappropriate behavior by a board member. Something's just not quite right here. I've never seen it. Since issuing the trespass, I have received over a dozen emails from folks who have shared very similar stories to the experience that Kat and Crystal experienced. And again, it makes me believe even more that the trespass was appropriate, and that really Alan's intent that day was to make folks feel uncomfortable. You should know, and I mentioned it in my statement, that I and the executive committee did seek legal counsel to make sure there was no legal liability associated with the trespass letter. And our legal counsel told us there was not legal liability associated with the trespass letter. I think that's important for you to know. Alan makes a statement that he was banned from all Sewell meetings. He was not. He was just banned from the building. And he's called into meetings before, and as everyone knows, he's attended all the board meetings and committees he's assigned to during this time period while he was while he was trespassed. It's important to note the executive committee did not approve the trespass. I just ran it by them because I thought that was an appropriate thing to do as an executive director. If any one of them would have told me it was inappropriate, I would have hesitated on the trespass, but they did not approve it. We did have several conversations and meetings about resolution, and those were good conversations, and I appreciate everybody's participation in that, including some outside people too. We just couldn't find a resolution that worked for all parties, and it just didn't happen. I think it's important to mention, yes, Alan made a public records request and been working on that very diligently. There is an opinion that neighborhood coalitions are not subject to public records requests. There are some ONI standards, and I've asked for an opinion from Civic Life. They've talked to the city attorney. We've got something back. I've shared that with Alan. It's not particularly clear. So the request from Kat and Crystal was not to share their emails. I'm honoring that request until legally I have to provide them. I also have shared with Alan that there's really nothing material left in the emails. I just left out pretty much the salutations and some of the names in the beginning, but I kept all that content in the emails. I think it's important that you don't let Alan be the victim here. He is not the victim in this situation. Yeah, if there is a motion tonight to amend, retract, or rescind the trespass, I urge you to vote against it. If the board takes no action, then there is nothing for Alan to file a grievance for. And I think that's important for you to note. And I look forward to getting beyond this issue and getting back to doing good work for Sewell. Thank you.
Okay, and let me do this real quick. And I believe Crystal is going to speak first, and then Kat. Ready? You're on mute. Okay, go ahead.
Thank you. Kat and I are sharing our 5-minute time period. I'm not a trained lawyer or, and I'm just a neighbor and somebody who really appreciates being able to have the time for our meeting. I want to say how enormously relieving it was to have affirmed what we believed was true, that we had the right to exclude a person who is disruptive to our work and to our mission. We have had that verified and upheld through Leroy's support through this entire 3 months that this has ground on and on. We also have that verified through our own legal counsel, and it is Alan Field who continues to try and negotiate or come to some kind of conditions about whether or not that could be just a year or that should go on, and it's not negotiable actually with him. And with Brian, this is the part that's not in dispute tonight, because Brian did apologize immediately, but Alan keeps bringing up that there was, as if there was no incident outside the room when we asked them to leave, as if they had just turned and left, and that certainly was not the case. There was maniacal laughter when we made sincere statements asking them to leave. That was like, ha, 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 ha. That was Brian Hallhalter multiple times, and like that kind of aggression in my space, so that it wasn't an act, was for Alan Field to dispute that I asked someone with sincere discomfort to back out of my personal space is offensive to me. Alan Field continues to offend with all of this. I want it to stop. I ask for your help in making it stop so that we can just continue with safety without being intruded upon. It's offensive to me that he sent out a 10-page statement to every board member when we abided by the boundaries of a 500-word statement, and then his 500 words had to be truncated from the 10 pages. This is the way that Alan Field processes. Kat, sorry, I forgot my timer, and you have 2.5 minutes. So if somebody could help me out.
Left. If you want to, I just paused it. 2 minutes. Pass
2
it
and a
on.
half.
I've got I did it 5 minutes, so I've got 2 minutes left.
Okay, over to Kat. Thank you.
Go for it, Kat.
Great. So hi, everyone. And I am really sorry that we're brought together over this situation. And it greatly pains me to see Crystal in more emotional distress. It's painful that this keeps going on. I want to start by just saying that I have tremendous respect and gratitude to Leroy as a white male for using his position of power and influence to intervene in a situation where vulnerable populations were being harassed. And if you don't know, in April of last year, all 6 women of the RNA board resigned in protest of the unsafe and hostile conditions that Alan Field was creating. So all 6 women resigned in protest, including Crystal and I, and 4 of our male allies. And we went off to create a new community organization that has done really great things, accomplishments in the past year. And then Alan, I don't know what compelled Alan Field to physically pursue us, but when he showed up at our meeting, and I very gently explained to him that it would be very uncomfortable for some of the women in the meeting if he attended, he started to insist that it was absolute right to participate in the meeting. And then when Brian stepped into Crystal's space and put his hands above his head, it became scary. And when they finally left, Crystal and I were left visibly shaking. And I hope, my fervent hope is that these consequences and this trespass ban allows Alan to reflect and to grow and to start a more peaceful path. And thank you for the opportunity to comment.
Thank you, Kat. Okay, so there's people with hands up. Do you know if you have your hands up? I'm going to lower people's hands. And only board members are allowed to ask questions. Miguel.
Okay, I'm going to make a motion, and I want to make a motion that is pretty explicit, and I would also add that this also speaks to a different problem that we also need to address within our bylaws, but that is something that I'll reserve for later. I would say that Kat and Crystal, based on what they have shared, and once again, trying to be an advocate and an ally for equity work, there's a difference between intent and impact. And, in this situation, I would say that based on the evidence that has been provided to us, the materials and the testimonies, and I'm not a lawyer, but I would motion that we remove Alan from the board, and I would suggest that the RNA will fill that vacancy with someone else, because at the end of the day, maybe Alan's intent was not what he intended to do, but his impact of his actions have resulted in something that is impacting two of our community members in a manner that I do not agree with. And I say this, Alan, in the best way that I can. The reason I'm motioning this is because at the end of the day, I would want to see you grow, continue to grow, and take that time to reflect on your actions. So that's the motion that I'm going to put on the floor.
Is there a second?
Thank you. I was getting to that. Alan, when you raise your hand.
No, I'm not seconding.
Okay, is there a second for the motion?
I second that motion.
Okay, Ruben seconds the motion. Just a point of clarification: to remove a board member, it takes, I believe it's 2/3 vote, and neighborhood association representatives, their board has to agree.
And there needs 14 days notice to remove someone under the
I
bylaws.
don't remember everything on there. Are you looking, Leroy?
I am
No,
looking.
10 days notice.
Can we hear from Pam while we're checking?
Oh, does she have her hand up? I can't see. Oh,
Yes, I did.
yeah, go ahead, Pam.
So I have a motion as well. May I state it now?
I'm not sure if we just do a whole bunch of motions. I think we need to finish one up, if I'm getting that correct.
Yeah, I got disconnected earlier, so I messaged you on email, but
yeah, I wasn't looking at my email.
Sorry.
So do you want me to read that section of the bylaws?
Sure, that'd be great, Leroy.
All right, so section 6 of the bylaws for removal reads, any director may be removed with or without cause by a 2/3 vote of the board of directors then in office. Neighborhood association directors may only be removed with the consent and approval of their neighborhood association. A director may also be removed by their nominating neighborhood association, business association, or other community group acting in accordance with its bylaws. All directors must be given 10 days written notice of a meeting, which includes removal of directors on the agenda.
So point of order, this motion is not allowed under our bylaws.
Something that, to your point, Alan, something that's confusing to me about the bylaws, and this is what I said earlier that we need to address later down the road, is that that particular bylaw seems confusing to me. It actually seems contradictory because, well, first of all, the expectation for at-large directors is different than the neighborhood association directors. That's the first piece. And the second piece is that technically this wasn't put on the agenda. This is a motion that I made right now. So I don't, anyways, that's a different conversation to have. So I guess if that's the case, I would motion that we put this on the September agenda.
All right. I guess, how do you read that, Leroy?
It's a good question. I mean, I'll reread the sentence in question because it is, all directors must be given 10 days written notice of a meeting, which includes removal of directors on the agenda. So, you know, I think Miguel was hinting at that, is if we have an agenda that has removal of a director, there has to be 10 days written notice. You didn't have an agenda item for removal of a director. Does that have to have 10 days notice? I mean, I think it's an open question. You know, it appears to be contemplating to me an agenda with a removal and 10 days notice. So it's just another area for the board development committee to work on the bylaws. I think they're not very clear.
Well, that'd be a different committee anyway. Machu, did you have a point there?
Yeah, I would just like to say that if we move this to the September meeting, I would like to motion that we limit to a 10-minute limit as an agenda item. Or I guess I'm amending Miguel's motion that we move this as a September item and limit to 10 minutes on the agenda. Thank you.
So, I mean, well, and that's the thing too, Miguel's point, and it's not an agenda item, so we don't technically need 10 days. Alan, I know you're the parliamentarian, so that's technically correct?
No, you can't remove someone without you unless you have 10 days agenda notice.
No, no, that's not what it said.
Yes, it does.
It said
Well, Tina, I would argue that all the more
Miguel is okay to table it till September, then we can do that then. How's that sound?
I didn't hear that.
So here, I'll just say something different.
Just table it. Yeah.
Okay.
I would motion that we put to the agenda the possible removal of Alan for September, and that the executive committee sends a letter to the RNA about informing them that that will be on the agenda as by the bylaws. Does that? Yeah.
I think that's
the motion I'm making.
Okay, is there a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, that was Amy for the minute taker. Okay. Had a lot of votes. Okay, let's go through. Is there any discussion? Okay, Bam.
No.
Lotus.
I'm sorry. Can we just? I'm a little bit unclear. The motion that we're voting on right now is to move this to an agenda item on September, right? I just want to be clear, and that the executive committee will send a letter to RNA.
Possible removal, yes, for September.
Yes, got it. Thank you. Yes, I.
Okay, Dave.
No.
Lindsay.
Aye.
Machu.
Aye.
Sam.
Yes.
Stephanie.
I'm going to abstain. I'm too unclear.
Alan.
Nope.
Ruben. Ruben. We'll get to him. Anna.
Sorry, yes.
Okay, thanks, Ruben. Anna?
Well, I'm very unclear of what's at stake here, so I'm going to vote no.
Jesse?
Aye.
Amy?
Aye.
Amber?
Aye.
Kat?
No.
Miguel?
Yes.
Estefania?
Yes.
So I've got 10 yes, 5 no, 1 abstention. Okay, so that will go on the meeting for next month. Pam?
Thank you. I move to direct staff to retract the March 13th trespass letter in its entirety and to send copies of the retraction to all parties who received the original letter. So my rationale is that my motion is based on a careful reading of the statements provided by all parties in order to fulfill my fiduciary duty of care as a sole board member. My review of the facts, not mere allegations of what actually happened at the March 13th meeting, has led to my determination that Alan's acts, attempting to attend what was advertised as a public meeting while maintaining his composure at all times, then promptly leaving when asked to do so, do not warrant the trespass action or in fact censure of any kind. 2, I find that the process itself was also flawed. There was no due process. The letter was issued without a fair and impartial investigation of the facts, which would have required talking to each side. And that absent an emergency, the executive director may not have had the authority to issue the trespass order without consulting the full board. And then finally, consideration of potential liability for Southeast Uplift and individual board members if a lawsuit is filed for defamation or breach of fiduciary duty of care. I should add that I'm a lawyer and I don't understand Leroy's statement that legal counsel feels that there's no potential legal liability.
Okay, did anyone have any questions besides motions? Because I know everyone's trying to get this, but I just want to make sure if anyone had questions that we got to those two.
If there's a second, we can then move to discussion.
I'm sorry, actually, is there a second for Pam?
Well, I second that because I have a lot of questions on.
We're already almost half an hour over. We got to keep things.
I have a question on process in this, and that's why I want to second this. I'm very afraid that there's something going out of order right now, and that's not even content-based right now for me.
Okay, so you second it.
I second that, yeah.
Is there a discussion? You unmuted, so I assumed you wanted to talk. No?
I just want to be clear on what the motion is. Pam is making a motion to
And we
rescind.
do have a recording of this, so.
Okay.
Yeah, sorry.
Right on. Nope.
You have something? Miguel, your hand's up. Oh, Kat, your hand's up. I'm sorry. Hold on, you're muted.
Can you hear me?
Yep, there you go. Thank you.
I guess I would like a little clarification exactly what the purpose of rescinding the letter or not is, since the period in question is already passed. Is it just the purpose is just for like reputational repair? Is that correct?
Yes.
Alan, you wanted yeah.
Yeah, because Kat's question is kind of also going towards me. I mean, at first, it was just about retracting that statement, which I find to be highly defaming, and it's based on past acts of no evidence. I mean, I don't even know what I'm being accused of. But also now that it was accidentally sent out to the world, you know, accidentally, not through Leroy's fault, but it was sent out to the world. And now people are spreading it out on Nextdoor. It's forever going to be damaging to me. And I really don't know what I did wrong in the past. It's all hearsay stories, and it's never been explained to me what exactly I've done. And
So Alan, can I bring in something?
okay, I'm just saying yeah, I do ask for the trespass to be retracted, the whole letter, because anytime I go on Nextdoor now, I fear someone's going to bring up the trespass forever. And I just don't think there was due process in how this whole proceedings is proceeding.
So I do want to say I take offense to you saying that you don't know what things you've done. No one's told you what you've done in the past. When I've had a conversation with you, when I told you something that you'd done in the past that was very intimidating, as I sat on the board at a meeting, and something that you did that was bullying. I've told you on a phone call, on May 16th, we had a 2-hour phone call about this. And I told you 2 circumstances. And then you turned around and you said, I don't know what anyone's talking about. And I said, Alan, I just told you of 2 circumstances where I personally felt this way.
Well, let's explain to the board what you were intimidated by. Is the first time you met me, I came into a meeting.
I don't think that's necessary.
Notebook.
I'm happy to share it to them, but we're at half an hour over right now. But
Okay.
This is what I'm saying is it has been told to you by me. So I'm offended that you continue to say that this has not happened.
Well, what you explained is I carried in a big stack of paper and you found that intimidating. I mean, that's what we're talking about.
And the bullying of the emails. And you apologized and said I was caught in the crossfire. So I can only assume that you were aiming at our organization, which is what I'm in charge of.
Yeah, and I apologize. I just want to explain to the board, you felt intimidated. I brought in a large stack of paper to a meeting.
Yep,
I apologize.
Everyone
I
wants it was a grievance that was filed by RNA. I don't know which side Alan was on, but he came in with a big stack of papers and just was very intimidating in his posturing. So there you go. You wanted me to explain that was
okay. No,
I don't want.
I think we should vote on this motion.
I don't want to get me and you. I just want to I am offended that you continue to say this. Go ahead, Lotus. What?
I think we should vote on this motion.
Okay, let's do it. Is everyone ready for a vote?
Yep.
All right. Pam. Oh, wait, let's see. So we are voting to retract the letter. Is that essentially it?
That's right.
Okay.
Correct.
Pam.
Aye.
Lotus.
No.
Dave.
Yes.
Lindsay.
No.
Machu.
No.
Sam.
No.
Stephanie. Oh, I can't hear you.
Mute.
I'll honestly have to abstain.
Oh, wait, I'm up to Alan. And no, you're gonna say yes.
Yes.
All right, Ruben.
No.
Anna.
Yes.
Jesse.
No.
Amy.
No.
Amber.
No.
Kat.
Abstain.
Miguel.
No.
Estefania. I didn't hear you.
No.
Oh, thank you. All right, so 2, 3, 4, 5, 7, 8, 9, 10. Okay, I believe we have 4 yes, 10 no, and 2 abstentions. Does that something look right, Leroy?
That's what I got.
All right. That's where we stand. We're at 9:32. Thank you everyone for participating. We good?
Thank you.
See you. Oh yeah, we don't have a meeting in August. So the next one will be September, what was it, 9th?
That's a Wednesday, not a Monday.
Yep, it's a Wednesday because the first.
Correct. We default to the second Wednesday when there is a holiday.
All right.
Have a safe summer, everybody.
Thanks, you too. Stay inside.
Yes.
Thank you.
Stay
Be
well.
safe.
Stay well. Avoid the virus.
Bye, everyone.
Bye. Have a good summer.